Oh dear, this was not meant to happen, thought Papa Stroll, because what I'm about to share with you is either the biggest case of sandbagging in F1's entire history, or for real, Aston Martin should be quaking in their boots. They could be about to crash out hard in 2026, and for once, the main cause of this might not be Lance Stroll. So just when I was wavering about making this piece, Honda made my job a heck of a lot easier. Now, of course, Adrian Newey, the team's new technical overseer, and partner supposedly equal to Papa Stroll, I'll get to that later in the video, so keep watching. This latest tidbit that I'm about to share with you comes from Honda themselves, and for any Aston Martin fans out there, or indeed Fernando Alonso fans that might have been hopeful that maybe in the next 12 months we might see win number 33 for the Spaniard, or maybe a fair shot at his third world title, it's a crime that he only has two, really. Well, you might want to sit down for this. Honda's CEO Koji Watanabe expressed his worries over Honda's adaptation to the brand new rules coming in for 2026, that they, as a company, are struggling with these guidelines. And if that turns out to be the case, then maybe Red Bull forging their own powertrains division and getting into bed with Ford meant that they dodged a bullet, especially if you take into account how fast Honda's mood has changed. Especially since back around the middle of April, May of last year, Honda was saying everything was going according to plan. But something in the last few months has seemingly changed. It's gone and thrown that initial confidence out of the window. So here are Watanabe-san's comments for your consideration. It's not just me talking and yapping. Ahem. The development of our power unit? Not so easy. We are struggling. Now we are trying our best to show the result next year. Everything is new. The motor is a new 355 kilowatt, very compact one we need. Also the lightweight battery, it's not so easy to develop. And also the small engine with the big power, everything is very difficult. But we try our best. Now, immediately, I know that many of you are going to be saying, oh, come off it, Law, they're sandbagging. I know. We have been conditioned to think sandbags ever since Mercedes would start every single year with Toto saying, yes, well, we won the Constructors' Championship last year, and with Lewis winning the title absolutely easily, there's not a guarantee we are going to it. Oh, look at that, we did the same thing over and over again. Go us. Whilst Watanabe-san was quick to point out in that Planet F1 article that other teams would probably be facing issues as well with these brand new power units, it is safe to say that Honda's latest admission is probably the most specific that we have heard, and the most stark in terms of realizing that, hey, maybe our hopes of winning the team title in the first year, as they made very, very public a while ago, might have been a little bit premature or even delusional. Because yes, that was their aim that they publicly decreed would be their objective in their first year together with Aston Martin. And that whole thing about the 355 kilowatt motor, we got to remember, these new regulations, it's a 50-50 split between electrical power and combustion. Both parts of the engine have to work. It's not like what we used to anymore. It's that different. How far it's changed since last year when the Honda president was confidently saying that everything was going just fine, that meant that they could really focus on the electrical power side of things without any worry. The shift suggests that whilst Honda initially prioritized electrification, the real challenge has turned out to be putting these components together in an efficient package without compromising performance. And for those of you who are long-term fans, I'm talking like more than a decade, isn't this ringing a bell in a way? Didn't Honda have similar issues regarding packaging when they had their first year with McLaren, them getting up to speed with the turbo hybrid engines, and then Ron Dennis imposing those draconian measures, everything had to fit in as small as possible, the size zero thing? Well, maybe we're getting this situation as well. Maybe Papa Stroll and the Aston Martin team, whoever's there, Andy Cowell, their new engine wizard, is insisting that Honda make this package as small, light, compact as possible, whilst also being incredibly powerful. This could easily spell disaster if we're not careful, and I wouldn't put it past Aston Martin to think this way. Because otherwise the Papa will be extremely angry. And for those of you blaming Adrian Newey for this, well, you can't do that, because he hasn't started work there yet. And unlike Mercedes and Ferrari, Honda lacks multiple customer teams to provide real-world testing data as well, making their development path a little bit riskier. And with the 2026 deadline approaching in regards to locking in the power unit detail for their customer cars to be able to design their own machines, Aston Martin's championship ambitions could be at risk if Honda fails to solve these critical issues in time. And quite honestly, This confession from the CEO, the head honcho of Honda, it's making me reevaluate who I think's actually prepared for 2026 when it comes to their engine and how good they can be. And really, it's making me think that Audi could be relatively decent after all, what with them bringing in Mattia Binotto, who was known at Ferrari for being their engine guru. I think they actually might stand in good stead in comparison to Red Bull powertrains, and Honda could be dead last at this point if this is all true, and this is indeed not sandbagging. Because at least Audi's been relatively pragmatic with their expectations for 2026 and beyond, and even Christian Horner and Red Bull Powertrains are saying, yeah, well, we're starting a brand new company, it's going to be a little bit tricky, we're not quite sure how we'll be in the first year, but we're going to give it a darn good go for the next couple of years and we'll see what happens. So they're keeping their expectations managed, but Aston Martin, Honda, no, they bought into each other's hype, coming back down to earth with a bang. Or should that be more accurately a suck, squeeze, burn blow? And now, ironically, they might be about to have a little bit of Palmer karma. Okay, Law, I hear you say, whatever. This isn't the end of the world, right? I mean, surely the aerodynamics side of things can make up for it. I mean, Red Bull were able to make use of that with Renault being a little bit anemic in the power unit department. No. Because even though Aston Martin have signed on Mercedes' former engine wizard leader Andy Cowell as a technical lead and now replacing Mike Crack, Adrian Newey has been recently pouring water around news outlets that would listen before he starts work at Aston Martin on March the 2nd. An interview Newey took part in for Automotor and Sport, which has obviously been spread to every single English-speaking news outlet out there because it's Adrian Newey and they worship the ground that he stands on or designs, have run with the part where Adrian went into detail as to the jeopardy regarding the engine rules, about which aspect of it will be the most important, and that he expects that these new rules will lead to that part of the car being far more important to get right than the current rules which state the car's ability to cut through the air effectively and utilise ground effect being paramount. Which is why Adrian Newey was hired in the first place for $30 million a year. Could this be the biggest blunder and the biggest asset to Adrian Newey's pocket going in Formula One? Either way, this is what Adrian had to say. It gets a little bit tacky, but I want to give you the full beans. I can't remember another time in Formula One when both the chassis regulations and the engine regulations have changed simultaneously, and where in this case the chassis regulations have been very much written to try to compensate, let's say, for the power unit regulations. It will become a power unit dominated regulation, at least to start with. There's a chance that if it's on the combustion engine side of it, that somebody comes up with the dominant combustion engine that will last throughout the length of the formula. Because the way the regulations are written, it's quite difficult for people who are behind to catch up. If it's on the electrical side, then there's much more ability to catch up if you're behind. And on the fuel side, which might play a role as well, there's flexibility in principle. But with dyno restrictions and the fact that everything's so optimized, you can't simply chuck in a different fuel to the engine that hasn't been optimized for it. That key part's important. Aramco's been sinking a lot of money into this. They want to make sure that they win. And if Honda's being a little bit pessimistic, Newey's being pessimistic, and the Strolls are being a little bit unrealistic, this is going to just spread even more discord at that team, seriously. I'm getting serious Toyota F1 vibes here. This level of uncertainty, right when the legendary designer is about to start his role as the team's technical manager and partner of the team at large, is a serious red flag when it comes to their fans' hopes for Fernando Alonso contesting for a world championship meaningfully. And if what the Spaniard has mentioned is accurate, the AMR26 might repeat the disappointment of the MCL33 and maybe send him packing off into retirement, this time for good. Because even though you think that Fernando Alonso will be racing in Formula One for, well, forever, he has been stating quite regularly as of late that he is viewing 2026 as his final season in Formula One. But if things go really well that year, he might reconsider his options. But it's good for him to have a target in a way. But from what I've been telling you, I now am suspecting that he is going to have a Mardy of a year because he's basically ruling out 2025. He's saying that that car, the AMR25, is not going to win, and that is basically just surviving the year for hopes of something better in the following campaign. Don't be surprised that we might hear some more sound bites to add to the Alonso FIA radio collection. Now, another part that is included in this Adrian Newey interview, which is buried at the bottom of most articles, is what is going to be expected from the legendary designer in regards to his output for not just 2026, but maybe a smattering going into this season as well. Because just as I suspected, the designer believes that even though his main priority is to make sure the 2026 car is the best it can possibly be, and that he can catch up in understanding the rules, that the team owners might likely want him to cast his eye quite a bit on the 2025 car, and maybe repeat what he did with Red Bull toward the end of his tenure. Maybe overseeing development and maybe steer the design team course. Maybe, as Pierre Vacher described, he just comes in every now and again, looks at something and then just goes, oh, that's good. Oh, no, don't do that. That's going to just send you off completely wildly. That kind of input and feedback was important to Red Bull. So maybe that could be useful and maybe not a waste of his time, because that might save Aston Martin from going down yet another black hole of abyss when it comes to car development. 2023 we had that, 2024 we really had that, 2025 I wouldn't be surprised if that happened again, but maybe with Newey he could save them from disaster. To maybe aspire to not being a lonely 5th place for a 3rd year in a row, because seriously, they started off so well in 2023 they finished 5th. 2024, they started off okay, then got really bad, but then everyone else was struggling, so they finished 5th anyway. What's going to happen next year? I have no idea. And like I said, their star driver, Fernando, not Lance, has already quashed hopes 2025 would be a year with some silverware coming back to the team's new HQ. Believing that the team won't win in the coming season, the main goal is to simply improve the outfit's technical understanding of the rules, that the car would be pretty much a continuation of the team's 2024 car. And we all know how that performed last year, right? I've got a really sinking feeling that Papa Stroll might be really tempted for some short-term success and maybe neglect the 2026 campaign more than he really should have, and far less than some of his competition, because in the here and now, Alpine, Haas, and even Racing Bulls, they've got ambitions, but yet they are managing expectations for the coming season. Most of the bottom half of the grid are thinking, well, got a fairly decent car with the 2024 version, let's just do upgrades as if we're just a continuation. No need to make a completely different chassis, just bolt on some new bits, akin to just carrying on with the season, so it's almost like nearly 50 Grand Prix almost, instead of 2 Grand Prix seasons or something like that. Because Haas and Alpine especially, they've been on an upward trend, which could easily see them eclipse Aston Martin at the beginning of the season, and if Racing Bulls get their act together as well, it could send Aston Martin falling down the order if they too can't get their act together, and maybe into the clutches of the backmarkers! You think I'm mocking? It's a legitimate worry. Because both Haas and Alpine are fired up, with both teams now having regained their balance after a tricky couple of seasons with newfound hope, restructuring efforts bearing fruit relatively rapidly, and drivers who are incredibly motivated to prove themselves. So far, what they've done with relatively little has borne fruit. They've managed to get some inspiration back, but what has Aston Martin achieved with their new facilities, really, that they couldn't have done with their old factory that got them so much in 2023? Granted, their new wind tunnel will help when it's fully implemented during this season, but the team have yet to rekindle the magic of the old facilities and the old team's Silverstone spirit. It's all been a damp squib, these new premises. And again, just because you have the best tools doesn't mean you'll automatically make the best car and win all the time. There's more to it than that. Like Haas has especially demonstrated, efficiency is key. It's my personal belief that Adrian Newey will be stretched incredibly thinly, more thin than he would ideally like when he's seriously coming into this brand new job, these brand new facilities. The expectations are incredibly high right from the get-go, and he's also having to catch up in his understanding of the technical regulations, and him understanding that computers are more important than ever, and that his traditional way of doing things with technical pencils and paper might not be as efficient as he would have seen back in the day. And on top of that, Aston Martin have to find a workflow that works with him, because that was a big thing that Red Bull kept going on about. How Christian Horner would say, oh, we did a lot catering Adrian's backward ways, the old ways and stuff. Oh, it was such an annoying thing indeed. And if he is asked to work on the 2025 car on top of the 2026 car, that could lead to the team not fully realising their potential. And most teams, like I said in the bottom half, are finding a way of easing off the gas pedal in regards to developing next season's car in favour of the one after that, which is a perfectly understandable plan. Something that Williams has been the most vocal about, but Aston Martin, they're in an incredible bind considering that they're neither a frontrunner nor a backmarker. What are they? What are they going to do? What say the boss? Does he subscribe to the same idea that James Vowles is doing, sacrificing 2025 for a better season after that? And speaking of subscribing, maybe you should do that with the channel, okay, if you like what I'm saying? Or does the allure of catching other drivers napping this year to maybe get some more prize money for the following year seem a little bit more enticing at their own cost? On top of that, there are other things that Newey has mentioned which could compromise his ability to produce cars which are world-class championship prospects. For starters, there is that talk about being asked to oversee 2 cars at once that I've mentioned. There is also the talk from him about being 2 months behind everyone else from the get-go, since the rules stated that from New Year's Day 2025, teams could recommence development on the 2026 cars. Adrian was, and still is, on gardening leave, meaning that he has got a lot to do to try and understand the current set of rules, and that is really important as well, because the one thing that Red Bull did, their last act to make sure that, yeah, Adrian could leave 1 year earlier than expected, it meant also, though, he was blocked from having access to his tools, and also blocked from private meetings regarding the constant updating of the regulations, meaning that the rule set that he knew before the Japanese Grand Prix of 2024 is now entirely different to what it is right now. And on top of that, Red Bull still kept him working incredibly hard while they were working on the RB17 hypercar project, which is basically their 100% owned version of the Valkyrie. And next, a Valkyrie 2.0 almost. Yeah, which will probably never be seen in public, save for maybe the Goodwood Festival of Speed. And most examples will be probably kept underneath a sheet in some random billionaire's underground vault. No one from the public to see. So if Papa Stroll is thinking that Adrian Newey is going to walk in on March the 2nd and immediately know everything there is to know with the current rule set of Formula 1 going forward, he's got another thing coming. Because Adrian has said that he is going to spend his first weeks getting to know the people, getting to know the facilities, and maybe trying to get some homework done on the current rules. It's going to take some time for him to prepare. And if Papa Stroll's coming in, dropping things on the table, saying, "Hey Adrian, work on our car, it's slow. We want our car to be fast, right now." Papa Stroll, Mr. Stroll, Lawrence, shouldn't we be focusing on the following year's cars? That means we get a good bedrock for the brand new rule set. No, I want success right now. Get to work! In all seriousness, though, I really don't feel like Aston Martin will get the best out of Adrian Newey in this current regulation cycle. And one thing we do have to remember as well, Red Bull didn't really see success from Adrian until his 4th season with them. And speaking of limitations, here is the obligatory Lance Stroll section that I saved for right at the very end, because I really didn't want to commit my entire video toward him. And it's something I'm a little bit skeptical about based on the source, so I am going to clutch onto the foam of doubt tightly for this one. But given how important it is for Adrian Newey to acclimate himself to Aston Martin as quickly as possible, even quicker than he did at Red Bull, I really need to bring this to your attention for at least your consideration. According to the Judge 13, an insider within the Greens has said that Adrian Newey is already calling for Lance Stroll to be removed. Now remember, I am holding on to this for dear life. The insider tells the online pundit, quote, "Experienced people understand that you can't make a slow driver fast. You either have speed or you don't." Does this train of thought have legs? Well, maybe. When you take into account the huge hurdles that Newey is about to find himself running up toward, he is going to need the best minds in this alongside him, as well as the best drivers possible, in which to extract as much feedback as possible. Now, no doubt here, he will be getting that and a bucket of chips from Fernando Alonso, because it's been a personal dream of his, and vice versa, for them to work together, having missed each other over the last 25 years, and Fernando considering Adrian, even though he'd never raced a car in Formula 1 in a proper Grand Prix, as one of his biggest rivals. As for Lance, his technical output, I've got absolutely no clue. And also, I had a really interesting thought. When was the last time that Papa Stroll came out in public on the record to fully support his son that wasn't in Drive to Survive? The last time I can recall is what went down in Qatar, and then he basically had no choice but to come out and defend his son. After that, I can't recall the last time he's actually been saying, "I'm actually proud of my son." And also, in terms of technical development, I got nothing. I've never heard Lance go into detail as to the machinations of the car, proper in-depth detail akin to what Fernando can bring. They've been together for 2 seasons. Surely some of that experience would have rubbed off on the Canadian, right? The mood of the driver in public interviews does not mirror a similar amount of detail that his more experienced teammate is able to project. And with Adrian up against it, most certainly, would he tolerate one of the drivers seemingly just coasting along, not offering any detail, and not really focused on the job in hand? You got to admit, most of Lance's incidents have come from his lack of concentration on the track, and his aura is practically non-existent. He's acting like some kind of NPC who managed to find a lot of money and is just existing, There is no real drive to, drive. And is that the kind of thing that Adrian Newey wants or needs at the moment? No, this team has championship aspirations. He needs both drivers to be on it, and so far, I'm not seeing it from Lance. That's my main bugbear with Lance, really. He just shows no passion, and as you can probably tell, I am quite passionate about Formula One. Like a big figure in this community would say, I'm not a fanboy, I'm just passionate. So could Newey use his soon-to-be activated powers, which are supposedly meant to be quite equal to Papa Stroll's, and maybe get him to reconsider his son's position in the team? Could he be the biggest voice that might embolden more of Aston Martin's partners to reconsider their driver lineup, and maybe force Stroll's hand prematurely? Because may I remind you, Papa Stroll didn't just flippantly say Adrian Newey is a big important member of the team. No, he constantly said that Adrian's not just a brand new employee, he is a key partner, a partner with him. They're locked together. I mean, this might be up until it suits him for it not to be the case, but as of now, Adrian's got a lot of influence on the Aston Martin Formula One team for it to be good, and obviously Papa Stroll wants the Formula One team to be good because the Aston Martin car company is in dire straits right now. Either this Aston Martin F1 team gets better, so that means they can sell more Aston Martin cars, or Papa Stroll might need to sell the team to make sure that the Aston Martin car company doesn't go out of business or go bankrupt or something even worse. In any case, when you couple the concerns of Newey with the very specific worries of Honda's boss, you've really got to start thinking that maybe the aspirations of Aston Martin might not come up with the goods after all, and that Aramco might have backed the wrong horse. Seriously, the amount of uncertainty regarding 2026 for Aston Martin is really growing. Seriously, the momentum against Aston Martin for 2026 is picking up a pace really rapidly. And once again, I am really getting major flashbacks towards Toyota, spending a heck of a lot of money for glory and then seeing barely anything in return. Fortunately though, and curiously enough, those same pitfalls are likely to not affect Toyota a second time, as they are beginning to ramp up their partnership with the Haas team. Could the two underrated forces in F1 band together to take down this ever more cumbersome behemoth that is Aston Martin? To find out why I think the Toyota-Haas partnership is a really exciting prospect that many people should be really giving their support toward, watch this video next, straight after this one.